Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Tyler, one of the customer experience leads here at Pietra. This is our second consecutive day of Let's Talk Tariffs. We had such an engaged group yesterday and a lively discussion that we have decided that we're going to provide daily updates on all the news surrounding tariffs, as well as some deep dives on daily topics. So let Prince join and we'll get started in just a minute. And while Prince is joining, just know the Q&A is open. Yesterday, we had a ton of questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can today. Drop those in the Q&A. We'll either answer them live or we'll bundle them together when the topic makes most sense with today's presentation. So lots of news happening today. We're currently targeting I think that's the new US. We've done tests in the past with international, and like they tell you they don't always. Hello. Hey, bro. We're gathering here.
Sweet. All right, I'll take off my hat as we get ready. See the participants piling in. I like this big purple background.
Yeah, that's new.
I love that. Okay, we'll let a couple people file in, and we'll let friends come online as well. I'm gonna go off video for 30 seconds, and I'll be back.
Hey, Tyler, should we wait for a few more folks?
Hey, Prince. I think we should go ahead and get started. Had a couple of quick tech issues getting launched, but we should be all set now. We're streaming on LinkedIn. We have a very cool new purple background. Good participation already. So let's go ahead and get started. Do you want to share your deck? I think you're on mute, Prince.
Oh, so sorry. I was just saying, definitely able to share. Tyler, I'm having some share issues. Would you be able to pull up the deck by any chance? Awesome.
See my screen here?
Indeed, we can.
Great. Happy to drive.
Cool. Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Tyler, maybe you just want to do a kind of a quick tee up on us and Pietra and who we are, and then we can start diving into the specifics. And actually, Rose here as well. So maybe if Tyler wanted to just do a quick intro about Pietra, about Ro and I, and then we can start diving in.
Yes, definitely. So thanks everybody for joining. We acknowledge that the topic of tariffs was a very important one and relevant for a ton of brands that we work with. So I'm pleased to introduce a couple of leaders from Pietra here. Ro Trivedi, CEO of Pietra, here to talk about tariffs, as well as Prince Gosh, the CEO of Factored Quality, two experts in this really important topic. And we provided an overview yesterday, and the engagement and feedback and queue of questions was just so high and large that we've decided to do daily discussions on this topic. So we're gathering again today. We'll provide some headlines of the day, some high level topics, as well as a deep dive on a select topic of the day that Prince will walk us through.
Awesome. Definitely happy to jump in.
Sweet,
Tyler,
I can give
maybe,
a yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
Ro, if you want to go ahead and give a brief background.
Yeah, so I'll kick this off and we'll spend a bulk of the time today, guys, talking about the tariffs and how we can help your businesses. Um, as a quick reminder, um, all right. Sorry about that, guys. Just making sure some of the background noise was being tended to. So quick overview about Pietra. Remember, this is we are a platform that helps e-commerce brands and brand owners operate their businesses more efficiently. We build software and services to help you scale your business without having to hire a big team. So for those of you who are new or have not checked us out, remember, if you're running a DTC brand and you want to, source products and packaging, you want to get set up with fulfillment, or even get help on some of the marketing stuff with some of those tools, you can use Pietra to do that. So I know these sessions get really, really packed and there's a lot of Q&A. This is not only open to members of Pietra, but it's also open to the public. So we're not going to use this to sell too many Pietra products. What we're going to do is we're going to remind people that all of the resources here are going to be available in the platform. We're going to send it around to our members. We're going to post it online publicly. And if you are starting a business and have any questions around how to actually go and execute and operate on this stuff, then definitely go log into Pietra and check it out. But I want to keep as much as time as we possibly can to go through the presentation that Prince has here.
Amazing. All right, why don't we keep on going? So I think the high level here, folks, is obviously there's a lot that's been going on in and around the tariff world. And we on the Pietra side have been trying to keep up to date with what's happening on behalf of everyone who's on this call. Every single day. Oh, just real quick, there's a note. Someone said part of the screen is black and people are cut out. Can everyone see us and can everyone see the screen that's being shared? Just want to confirm. Yes, no, maybe so.
Maybe not. Let's try again, Prince.
Yeah, I think Tyler's actually driving on sharing.
Not quite sure what's going on.
Prince, are you able to share? You might be
No
able to share.
worries. Yeah, let me see, Tyler, if I can just pull up on sharing. Cool.
Here we go. We got a couple people saying yes, they can hear
All
and
right.
see everything. So now you might just need to reset your
No,
screen share.
no worries, Tyler. I will go ahead and share. All good.
Cool. Thanks, Brent.
No worries. So let me just take this over. All right, wonderful. So jumping over here, everyone. So, like we were saying, tariffs are obviously it's top of mind for everyone right now, which is why we're on this call. This is a moving target, is maybe the first thing that I'll emphasize to everyone here. And we put together a few slides to go through today, just chatting about what is the latest and greatest, and what you guys can do as business owners to prepare and navigate this kind of time of uncertainty, and even just to help you get familiar with what tariffs are. And so just before we start, we wanted to call out a few things. So the exact tariff numbers have been moving around quite a bit, and this is not to over speculate or to make anyone scared, but the most recent conversations that have been happening are around the United States looking to impose an additional potential 50% duty on top of China. China is also imposing tariffs on US exported and then imported goods into China. So that's kind of a moving situation as well. There have been a few countries and a few nations in and around Europe that are having active discussions around moving around negotiation or having active discussions with the US to try and see if there's a world or if there's a way where we can potentially where the US could actually reduce the import tariffs based on products coming in from those countries. And this is something that's happening, in real time. So we're hosting one of these, I believe, every single day, Tyler, at around 4 p.m. As these happen, and as there are more updates on a day-to-day basis, we'll start adding in more information, and then we'll go from there. Awesome. Moving on to the next slide here, guys. So we wanted to start today with,
And really quick, just before we jump in,
yep,
Prince, thank you.
please.
Reminder, like yesterday, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. All these things are, changing by the day, and so we have the expert here. We have Prince. Please use the Q&A to ask questions, and we'll do a couple things. We'll jump in if things are really timely and we want to answer them on the slide, or we'll come back and answer them in batches after a couple slides. So please, please, please don't hesitate to ask questions directly into the Q&A in the Zoom. Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. So just to kick everyone off and just to start things, as a reminder and as kind of a refresher, what is a tariff is, the a fundamental question, right? And a tariff is ultimately a tax on imports that are put on top of goods that are entering into a country. And so tariffs are ultimately based on what is it that you are importing? What is the product or the good that you're moving from China or another country into the US? And then what is the value of that good, right? So what is the actual commercial or production value of that product? And then what do the trade agreements between the country of export, China, and the country of import, the US, what do those trade agreements ultimately say? So this is how tariffs work. Tariffs and who pays the tariffs are oftentimes dictated by something called Incoterms, which we'll talk about a little bit in the next few slides. And we put together a few tables that hopefully should help everyone get to really simple and straightforward clarity on what needs to be paid and by who. But the one thing that we'll note and we'll say kind of at the beginning of all of these are this is not and should not be taken as financial or legal advice. We are here to help and we are here to support brands in the Pietra ecosystem and out of the Pietra ecosystem through this confusing time. But the only person who can tell you as a business owner what is the actual amount of import duties and taxes and tariffs that you should be paying is a licensed customs broker. We at Pietra have a number of partner licensed customs brokers that we are more than happy to match you with through our platform. Your factories or your exporters may have licensed brokers as well. Or if you work with an independent third-party freight forwarder, they might also have or should have a licensed broker on staff. So please speak to a licensed broker to understand exactly what you need to be paying in terms of duties and tariffs. And the purpose of today is to use this as an educational experience. Awesome. Anything else to add there, Tyler? Cool. All right, just jumping to the next slide. So let's start here. One of the big questions that we got from yesterday's webinar, and for anyone who's logging in kind of multiple days, we'll be scaffolding questions from the previous days into the next. But the big question is, hey, when I import a product, who is responsible for paying for the shipping and who's responsible for paying for the products and for the duties and the tariffs on top of the products? And so in the world of global manufacturing and shipping, the way to think about who pays for the product, is it me as an importer or a buyer and a brand, or is it the factory? This is determined based on something called an Incoterm. An Incoterm stands for an international commercial term, which is basically just the commercial agreement between the buyer, you guys as brands and creators, and the sellers, the factories that are actually manufacturing the goods. And so Incoterms basically tell you three things. who is responsible for the shipping, who is responsible for paying for the shipping and for the duties, and then when do you actually legally own the product as compared to when does the factory let go of ownership of the product? So these are the most kind of common sets of Incoterms that happens. The most common kind of Incoterms that anyone who hears a Pietra user uh, anyone who is a Pietra user will use is either Xworks, which is where you take hold of shipping and responsibility of shipping and paying import duties and tariffs of the products, or you are probably working on a DDP Incoterm, which is where the factory, the seller, handles everything, including the cost of the product, the cost of the shipment, and the cost of the duty. And then it's on the responsibility of the factory to move those goods into the US. You simply pay a commercial invoice to the factory that says, hey, this is the cost of a candle. That's $5. This is the cost to ship the candle. That's another $2. And this is the cost of the duty or tariff on top of that, which is an additional 50 cents or whatever it may be. So I'll pause there for a quick second just to introduce this concept of Incoterms. Tyler, Rowe, any Q&A we want to touch here or any other points to add on from your guys' end?
Just a specific question here in the Q&A. Differences and similarities between DDP and LDP.
Yeah, great question. I actually don't fully know what LDP stands for. I don't know if that's one
Yeah.
of the more common ones, but I would just do a quick Google search and we can follow up on that
Yep.
as well.
Yeah. LDP, landed duty paid.
Got it. Yeah.
DDP, delivered duty paid. Would encourage this asker of the question to check those terms out. We can follow up after the session today as well.
Yeah, typically if it's an LDP, that's the same thing as DDP. So sometimes there are some factories that will go even one step further where they will take care of not just the importing the product into the US and sending it to a warehouse, but actually getting it to your customer's front door, which is the fully landed product. The concept or the term landed is something that's often used in international supply chains and manufacturing to describe the product hitting US soil or the product actually hitting your end customer's doorstep. And so
Yeah.
a landed cost is everything that goes into that end delivery. Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Just to keep on going. So now the big question that everyone has, and we've been getting a lot of is, hey, when exactly am I as a business owner, as a small business, as a buyer, when am I responsible to pay the customs duties or who is responsible for paying the customs duties? So we put together a couple of quick slides to make this super simple and super easy for all of you guys on the call. And like Tyler said, we'll actually share this around with everyone after this. There's three ways to ultimately work with manufacturers, and there's three ways to import products. So you want to pay attention to the header here, okay? When you're buying products from a factory, you can either buy individual packages, also called parcel, which is where think like an Amazon product showing up to your house. You can buy products and ship them LCL, which stands for less than container load, where you're buying pallets of inventory that are put onto a container, and then that container is put onto a ship or put onto a plane. Or you can work with the factory to ship what's called FCL, full container load, where you have so much inventory that you actually take up and buy an entire container's worth of space. And typically, a freight forwarder or your factory will work with a freight forwarder to help you figure out, are you shipping parcel? Are you shipping LCL or are you shipping FCL? Most e-commerce sellers across America ship individual parcel or individual packages. When you ship individual parcel, the big question is, hey, whose responsibility is it to pay for duties? And this is where the concept of Incoterms relate to the concept of ultimately the duties. So if you
And I
are,
want to jump in here. I want to jump in
yeah,
here because
please.
there's a couple of questions on this specifically,
Awesome.
Prince, and maybe you could take 30 seconds. So Jacinth, you were asking, how often do these manufacturers offer DDPs? Is it a unicorn offer? How do you talk to them? So Prince, maybe you can not only explain it, but then, help them realize or help explain how you can talk to your factories about this.
Totally. So the great question. The answer is actually a lot of global manufacturing is done via DDP. I would say, Ro, probably 90% of our buyers on the Pietra marketplace, they end up shipping DDP with their suppliers. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, totally. And just to go one level deeper on that, Jacinth, it's not a unicorn offer, and the reason, sorry, not to burst your bubble, is that someone eventually has to pay for this, right? So usually what factories do is they won't necessarily say, okay, don't worry, like I will cover all the costs. Usually what will happen on your invoice is that you'll see a separate shipping invoice, or it will be included in your purchase order where they will go and do the hard work of organizing freight and transportation, et cetera. But then they'll just charge you for it. So, it might seem like a unicorn offer if you think of it as they'll just do the work and pay for it all, but the reality is they are probably passing on the cost to you, and then you can decide if you want to pass it on to the customer as well.
That's exactly right. So ultimately, the Incoterm that you choose, the simplest way to think about it is it's kind of how much control do you want over the shipping of the goods, and how much control do you want over, visibility into seeing exactly what you're paying for, or do you just want your factory to take care of all of it? The trade-off is if you ship DDP, your factory just simplifies the entire process. You get one invoice, like Ro just said, but you don't necessarily get to choose who is shipping the product, and you don't get to necessarily negotiate those rates or try and see, hey, is there any other optimization that can be done of the duties here? Awesome. So just to continue on, so let's say, for example, you guys are an e-commerce seller or an e-commerce, I guess, buyer and seller in this case, that is shipping parcel. Okay. So you are shipping individual products from your factories into the US. If the Incoterms you have set up with your factories, and Incoterms are something that are dictated directly between the importer, the brand, and the factory, the seller. So you decide upon these with your factories. If it's X works, okay, so going back, X works means that you as the buyer, you take all responsibilities from the factory's door. That means that you are responsible for paying the customs duties. But if you are shipping DDP, again, as a reminder, DDP is where the factory takes care of everything. The factory will actually take care of paying the duties, and then you get an ultimate invoice that says, hey, this was $5 to make this candle, $2 to ship this candle, and 50 cents to pay the duties of this container. And then if you're shipping DAP, which is another kind of common Incoterm that's used. This is where the factory is responsible for everything around getting the product into the US, but then is delivered, but then ultimately is handed over for you guys at a buyer's location, which can be, for example, a Pietra fulfillment center or any other fulfillment center you use. The onus of the responsibility is on you, the buyer, to pay the customs duty. So this is what happens when you ship parcel. When you ship LCL, so if you are a slightly larger brand, let's say you're doing 500,000 in revenue, up into about 1 million in revenue, okay? This is when you typically, as a brand, start shipping pallets. And when you have enough inventory to start saying, hey, we're going to load all this inventory up into a pallet, and then we're going to get all of it onto a boat or onto a plane to get that into the US. In that case, if you're shipping X Works, it's the buyer that ultimately pays the custom duties. If you're shipping FOB, which stands for free on board, it is the buyer as well. Or if you're shipping CFR, which is cost and freight, which is where the seller pays for the shipping, but you as the buyer, you're handling, let's call it the duties and the handling, you're handling the duties of it here. It's still you as the buyer who is paying for the customs duties. And then you can see this is when the customs gets paid. Sometimes it happens if you're shipping LCL before the cargo is released. So right now, there's actually a lot of importers that are having cargo stuck at ports of entry because they have not had duties accurately paid, or customs is taking a long time to get those duties to get those duties accurately processed. So just expect if you're shipping LCL that there may be many delays. And then ultimately, if you're a brand that's doing above 1 million in revenue, up until hundreds of millions of revenue, this is what Nike does, this is what Apple does, this is what the largest companies in the world do. You ship full container loads. And in full container loads, based on again some of the Incoterms, you are typically as a buyer responsible for paying those duties. And the one thing I'll like very specifically again say here is when we say the word buyer, it's on you as a responsibility to do it, but you should work with a licensed customs broker who is doing this, acting as an agent on your behalf. Kind of like having a lawyer who does the negotiation in a contract or on a deal on your behalf. That is the role of your licensed customs broker. Again, we
And
have a ton.
this is probably a good time to jump in and remind everyone that was here yesterday around trying to circumvent these things and the implications. So, Prince, you want to talk a little bit about what happens when it feels like something that is very quick and you can kind of push it through and the government isn't ready. Do you want to talk a little bit about the impacts of not following the rules?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll jump ahead a little bit here, guys, and we'll share all these slides after. But here's the big thing to really mention, and this was, I think, a slide we shared yesterday. Okay. So customs and duties are a really complex is a really complex product. There are people whose entire lives are dedicated to becoming trained and licensed customs brokers. Again, we can introduce you to some, or your factories may already have some on file. But the reason that customs are so complex is because they're determined based on the composition of the product. So, how is your product made? What goes into the product? Where was your product exported from? So, what is the country that the product left from? What is the country that the product was imported to? And then, what are the current trade agreements between the country of export and the country of import? So, the big news happening right now is there was, based on last week's newest announcements from the Trump administration, an increased set of what is being called stacked tariffs that are going into effect. Okay. So a stacked tariff is when you have a baseline tariff and then a tariff on top of that, and then a tariff on top of that based on certain rules and conditions. And these stack together to create ultimately this final number of 54% as an example that you can see here. So the Trump administration, they said, hey, there were already some existing tariffs into effect, right? From previous years, from January, from February. They said starting April 5th, so now 3 days ago, there was a new 10% baseline tariff on top of everything that was happening. Uh, there was already this 20% existing tariff from previously. That's what I was referring to at the beginning. And now going into effect actually in the next 8 hours, so starting at 11:59 tonight, 7 hours and 29 minutes from now, there's a new 34% reciprocal tariff that is going to be added on to any imports coming out of China and into the US. So the way that the law has been written, guys, so far, and again, consult with a licensed customs broker, is inventory needs to be on its final mode of transportation. So the last boat that is importing the products into the US by 11:59 p.m. tonight, to be able to not get hit with that 34% reciprocal tariffs. Anything after that will get hit with that 34% reciprocal tariffs stacked on top of the existing tariffs and the new baseline tariffs from 4 days ago.
Sweet. Let me just jump in here.
Yeah, please.
Kalia or Kalia Carter. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but let's go with Kalia. Cool name. Okay, so the question of the group that I think is very important is, as far as licensed custom brokers, are they typically independently employed, or are they employed by the government or the factory? Would you recommend seeking out your own customs broker? So we talked about this yesterday, and I think it's super important. Generally what's going to happen is that you should seek out someone who does this for a living across multiple different companies. So you get this as, if you're a Pietra member, you get to speak to a professional transportation company that is not a part of Pietra's company or a part of your factory's companies. If you click the button in the fulfillment hub, and this is going to be recording so people can see it, called Book Freight, you will get connected to one of our partners that have these licensed professionals on staff, and you can work with them directly to organize your transportation. Now, to answer the question, one level deeper, is there is value in bringing in a third party person to help you with this, right? If you work with the factory, they may have partnerships with existing transportation companies that might be higher cost. They are incentivized to, get that product out of their factory to wherever you need it to go and have you pay. And so what we see is a lot of these manufacturers around the world will have their buddies that are helping them with the transportation of their facility. They may be great at their job, they may be good at their job, they might not be so great at their job. With what you get through Pietra is a trusted licensed partner who's a third party, and they will say, okay, where is your factory? Where do you want to go? And let's work together on your side to then go negotiate and figure this out with the factories. Now, the last thing I'll leave everyone with is, if you ask a factory directly, they are going to probably tell you, don't worry about it, we'll just handle it. The reason for that is because you're just going to pay them. And so if you're worried about that at all, or just want to be extra cautious, just go into the Pietra Hub, click Book Freight, and talk to one of our partners. And just tell them, I'm manufacturing it here, here's where I want it to go. Like, I'm manufacturing it in this province in China. I need it to get to North Carolina for fulfillment. Can you help me get that on a plane, train, boat, or all of the above? And they'll help you go from, okay, there's pallets in a factory in India to customs and getting it through and making sure it gets to, JFK in New York and then on a truck to where you need to go. So there is a significant benefit of using a third party instead of just asking the factory, what do you think?
Awesome.
Great.
Totally makes sense.
I'll jump in with a pair of questions from the Q&A and focusing on this topic of, I think, stacked tariffs and really all-in cost. There's a question, for instance, for fashion and textiles, which countries are the most affordable to buy from and have goods made? Also, in this sense, would it be cheaper to make goods in the USA? And then there's a follow-up question about textile factories coming back to the USA. Well, I'm not sure that we can answer that question directly today. I think time will tell. And also, I would encourage anybody who's thinking about making an inventory purchase and finding that factory that's the right match for you to think more about the stacked tariffs and the all-in eventual cost to you, because this is going to be the decision that new brand owners, e-commerce businesses need to make when finding that factory. It's going to be a little bit more complex. You're going to have to calculate a few more variables in order to calculate that all-in cost. So the direct answer to your question is, would it be cheaper to make goods in the USA? We're not sure yet, but we will find out over time. And are textile factories coming back to the USA? We don't know yet, but that I think is one move the administration, is betting on, frankly.
Yeah, and actually, let me flip to the positive side of this, okay? For all the brand owners that are producing things like garments overseas that have tariffs, even in mainland China. Um, it's important, as Tyler said, to go and do the math on your products that you're selling, because in some cases, even with the tariffs, they are going to be lower cost than producing it in another region of the world. The capacity is there, the production capability is there. So don't necessarily write this off as, oh my God, like I can't produce it anymore. Some of the price differences between excuse me, overseas and domestically can be quite stark. So, even if the cost on a water bottle that you can make overseas goes from $2 to $4, you might be better off than paying, $7.50 for it made in a different part of the world, whether it's the US or Europe. So really do the math. And I know these numbers look very scary and doubling the cost of something feels like a insurmountable problem. But really think about the alternatives that you have and do some research just to make sure that, look, a $3 t-shirt that you had to make, being $6 in cost is pretty costly, but that same t-shirt might be, $11, $12 if you made it at a print shop in, Las Vegas or something. So it's not all doom and gloom, guys. I think you got to do the math. It's based on your company. It's based on the products, and you might find there are still some acceptable outcomes there.
100%. Awesome. And just to keep an eye on the clock and to make sure that we get to one of the other important parts of what we wanted to touch base on is I'll skip a couple of the background slides and I'll actually jump into a few technical and recommended actions for businesses. And actually, there's one more slide that we will want to quickly touch base on, which is about de minimis. And so let me actually open this up because I think this is pretty relevant and pertinent for a lot of smaller sellers, especially. So there's a lot of you that probably have historically shipped goods or imported inventory that was underneath $800 in value. So think like small parcel shipments, and you haven't had to pay any sort of duty or any sort of tariff on this product at all. So what is happening effective May 2nd, so exactly in a little bit less than 30 days from now, 23 days from now, is the government administration is actually going to eliminate the concept of de minimis from imports from China and Hong Kong and will instead start charging an import duty or a tariff even on these sub $800 valued shipments. And soon we'll start to roll out this policy for imports, not just from China and Hong Kong, but from other countries across the world too. So across a lot of the European countries, a lot of the Southeast Asian countries, and a lot of the African countries as well. The big sort of implication is for a lot of Amazon e-commerce sellers that were either drop shipping or sending a product directly from factory to a parcel network or a distribution center, and then ultimately hitting a parcel network to get that product into end consumers' hands. This will be a pretty big jump in the costs associated now to be able to do that. The Trip Administration, if you guys remember, wanted to actually try and do this at the end of last year, earlier on this year in January and February, and they were ultimately unable to do so because of technology limitations and the actual systems in which the government processes duties and tariffs just weren't up to speed. Those now are. And so this is going into effect. So this is just something else that if you're an e-commerce seller that is leveraging de minimis, you will want to keep a close eye on because this will impact your cash conversion cycles and impact your P&L as a business. Awesome. So in the 5 minutes or so we have left, what I'll actually do is now jump this back to, what is it really that brands and e-commerce sellers can do? What are some of the tactical recommended actions that we recommend you guys do here at Pietra? So the first is kind of like Rose said, looking at tariffs and duties at just a one size fits all lens is not a good way to think about making strategic decisions for your business. Um, there's many things that ultimately go into affecting, how you want to run your business. From a supply chain standpoint, tariffs and duties may be one part of it, but cost to produce and MOQs, so minimum order quantities, are another key part of it. So MOQs, as many of you may know, are when a factory tells you, hey, we can produce 10,000 units at $3 per unit, or we can produce 100,000 units at a buck 50 per unit. So that massively varies your bottom line as a business. What we are seeing in real time is that factories from different regions across Europe, across Mexico, in an effort to stay competitive and win business away from Southeast Asian suppliers, are actively dropping their MOQs to try and be more friendly to different buyers like you guys. So we highly recommend you explore a lot of European factories, a lot of Mexican factories. And then apart from that, as much as you can, try and have open and transparent conversations with your suppliers. And this manifests into two ways. The first is try and give your suppliers some degree of clarity or forecasting into saying, hey, we know that we have X many incoming orders from our customers or purchase orders from retailers that are buying inventory from us. We know that we can buy 100,000 units, 200,000 units at any given time. If you can give your factory that, they can in exchange give you lower cost per unit, right? So ultimately, manufacturing is fundamental economics. If you can guarantee demand, these factories can give you supply at a lower cost. And so I would highly encourage you to do that with your factories and your suppliers. And the last piece is a lot of factories, in an effort to remain competitive and even in an effort to retain business, we are seeing a lot of factories actually absorbing some portion of these tariff costs from their consumers. So factories are saying, guys, look, we know that it now is 30, 40, 50% more expensive to buy from us. We will absorb 25% of that. You guys eat 10% of that and pass 15% of that on to your end consumer. So just have these conversations. These factories are long-term partners for you and your business. And if you ever need help in having those conversations or how to have those conversations, reach out to us over here at Pietra, and we can definitely help facilitate some of that. Awesome. Tyler, in the last 2 or 3 minutes we have left, any other questions we want to get to or anything else we want to chat about?
Yeah, we can. Here we go. Let me go. I'll talk a little bit about how people can use Pietra to search for different factories as they are looking to potentially scale up their business or diversify their supply chain. But first, let's start with a question from Jacinth. I have a 40-foot container being consolidated in China as we speak. What do you think about the manufacturer lowering their costs to combat the duty? Prince, did you want to take this one? It might be a
Yeah,
hard
I
one,
mean,
but
I think this is what we just talked about here, Jason. You can definitely have that conversation with your manufacturer and say, guys, look, this is something that's changing in real time right now. If you have a 40-foot container of inventory being consolidated in real time, like that means that it's probably not going to get on the water between now and the end of the day, unless you have a phenomenal freight forwarder that's able to do that. So this will probably be subject to the new 34% reciprocal tariff. So you should just have that conversation, Jason, we all wish you should have the conversation with your supplier, and you should just say, guys, look, like this is happening. I want to keep doing business with you, or I'm gonna have to move away and find a new supplier and just see what they say.
Right. I think that's a good reminder to everyone, which is remember that while this might feel like it's an impossible situation, your factories and your suppliers also want you to stay in business so you can keep working with them. So these are good, healthy conversations to have with your factories. And, sometimes factories do have some margin to play with, and they understand that if the difference is losing you as a customer or keeping you as a customer, maybe there's some wiggle room. Maybe there's some wiggle room on terms. Maybe there's some wiggle room on the actual price. Maybe there's some rebates. Get creative, but definitely have those conversations with your factories. And so I'll end here. Excuse me. I'll end here in the last 60 seconds. Is just a reminder to everyone. Actually, before I jump into that, okay, what are Kalia is asking, what are the odds that these tariffs are long-term, 4 years or more? It feels like the decisions are being made every day. How will we know when to start planning for the long term? I think the short answer to that is we're all in the same boat as you. I think we've had a couple of different starts and stops along the way. And the one thing that I would caution for is just understanding no one really knows the answer and the future. Even the deep insiders or Prince, who is, CEO of a company that has been doing this for many years, on our side with Pietra on the manufacturing side. What you can do though is I think realize that directionally these changes are going to continue at least through the near term. While they're refining things like how do they enforce it, what are the actual numbers, I think it's not written anywhere explicitly, but it is something that we believe is in some form going to stay for quite some time. So I think I wish I had a better answer that it was going to, get better or going to change. And ultimately, it's going to be based on politics and people coming to the table and brokering trade deals with different countries. So yes, we might wake up tomorrow and there might be, an awesome trade deal between China and the US, and this goes back down to something that's super manageable like last year. It could also, as you've seen, escalate in the short term and turn into something that's a little bit worse for brand owners. Rest assured, again, I don't like these to be doom and gloom. I think the world has gone through many of these, situations, and so they do end up coming to some happy medium. But right now, it looks like, at least from our side, like the U.S. side, that it is something that's meant to provoke a lot of the nations to come to the table and start negotiating more sane rates. So I would just watch for those things. But remember, it's you never want to be thinking in this space, I think, too long or too short until there's more information, directly from the White House.
Yeah,
I wish I had a better
I'd agree
answer
with
to
all
that
that.
one.
Well, and let's keep in mind, as Rose said, this could open up new markets too. So keep an eye out for that. Don't just focus on things changing with imports from China. There's a big world out there with a lot of different markets that can open up new opportunities for your brand.
Yeah, I actually want to end with showing the people on this call, and then it's going to be recorded. I think one of the interesting things that we are doing as a company is making sure that everyone realizes that you can use your Pietra membership to actually diversify your supply chain and start talking to these new factories. So I'm going to jump in really quickly and just show you a quick example of some of the awesome stuff that you get. But I'm going to jump into the operations hub. This is my account. I'm going to click on the source with no fees button. And let's say that you want to find a factory in the world that works with a brand. Let's just, because we only have 30 seconds, let's just take a popular one. I'm going to type in Nike. Um, you'll see that you get a bunch of factories that have worked with Nike, and they might be in China like you have here. But I want to turn your attention to this button called the expanded network. So here you're going to see factories that have worked with Nike all around the world. Indonesia, you have China here, you have India. So you can see what they're going to make, and you can click in and you can find their contact information if you're a member. So if you're looking to start the process of diversifying your supply chain and are looking for factories around the world, as Tyler said, the world is very, very big. You should definitely be jumping into the sourcing hub, searching, browsing, trying to talk to as many factories as you can about diversifying your supply chain. You can see there's all the categories. You can use search. You can submit a project to the open marketplace. There are literally tens of thousands of factories, guys, that you can start chatting with immediately and start potentially working with. And even if it starts with a small order or a set of samples, it's going to set you on a path to improve this. So not to sell and oversell past the close, as I want this to be about tariffs, but you guys do have some pretty powerful tools to start looking at the rest of the world and saying, hey, like this is happening. Can you work with us? Whether it's in Europe or North America, Latin America, etc.
Amazing. Tyler,
Cool.
if folks need help sourcing or if folks want to learn more, what's the best way to reach out?
Great. Always great to reach out to creators at pietrastudio.com. Feel free to chat us up at that tile at the lower right-hand corner. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to all attendees today. I'm here to be a resource for you and point you in the right direction too.
Yep, and I'm gonna send a quick note to Justin here um, to for the suppliers and the factories that are on this call as well. This is important. So our question was that if I'm a textile manufacturer here in the U.S. Profit margins are already pretty thin. How do I grow this business and make more money? I think this is the perfect time to actually join the platform as a supplier, right? Everyone in the world is going to be looking to produce probably like never before here in the US. So I'm going to send you a quick note right now. And remember, if you are a supplier and you're looking to take advantage of people changing for the first time their supply chains in a long time, definitely consider joining Pietra on the supplier side so that people can find your business.
Amazing. Alrighty. Well,
Great.
thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on. And please do reach out if there's anything we can do to help.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks all. Bye now.